Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming once again and more Dragons Dogma 2. Today we're talking weapon skills, which are the best weapon skills of the game, or rather what's the best weapon skill for every vocation in the game. I'll be covering the best options, why I think you need to run these skills and what actually makes them so potent, but not every skill is specifically for maximum DPS. There's a variety of reasons to run the skills, it has to have the most impact on use, and some of them are just ridiculous for that purpose. So with that said, let's start from top to bottom at Fighter. So for Fighter, I think it comes between two specific weapon skills. The obvious one is going to be Riotous Fury. It allows you to contact with a first blow, and you follow that with a bunch of attacks that ends with a big blow. Basically, it's your best DPS option that you have as a fighter, as a vocation that's not really about dealing DPS. You want to control the fight. You want to take the heat off your allies. But you know, there are DPS windows created, and you're trying to create lots of them. So having a reliable DPS combo is really important, and Riotous Fury is exactly that, and it's your best option for it. And I think it's a no-brainer to run this as the best weapon skill for this specific vocation. However, if I was going to pick one that's not like a master skill, I'd pick Full Moon Slash. It's the circular spin that is absolutely incredible for dealing AoE damage to packs, and in general just dealing a nice burst of damage. It's still going to serve you against bigger foes, and it's this kind of nice, quick, effective window of burst. Next up then, we have Archer. The ability you start with and then eventually upgrade to Manifold Shot. This becomes your main spender, where you're spamming constantly. It's your bread and butter ability. From mid-combat, when you're moving around and trying to land these blows at the same time as evading attacks, I think this is your best option. But if we were thinking specifically DPS, I think it's actually Tempest Shot that's the best DPS consistently. You have to hold yourself down and you send out this real barrage of arrows. When you upgrade it to Tempest Shot, the DPS gets very good, and obviously as you get higher strength and a more upgraded weapon, you're just putting out some of the best raw range DPS available in the game. Or if, say, the enemy is knocked down and you're going to shoot the heart or the head or whatever it is, the weak point, this is the ability to use. Repeatedly spam it while you're free to do so. So while Manifold Shot's great, I think Tempest Shot, if you could only pick one, this is your best DPS option. Moving on, we now have Mage. Mage is very impactful, but it's an awkward one because not many people actually play it. Normally you slap this on your pawn. We'll just say the ultimate skill here is pretty much the best option. It's going to summon that huge bubble of holy light, and that's going to generate infinite stamina for the period that it's going. It's going to increase your speed, and it's also going to reduce the damage you've taken while you're all fighting in it. Obviously the downside is that it's going to have the caster stumble and fall over at its end, but that is well worth it, especially when we're talking about a pawn who's being your support. However, I really want to recommend because this is this like red bubble AoE which gives you haste. Haste gives you attack speed, cast speed, and movement speed. Obviously getting around the world, this is wonderful to maintain and occasionally pop on. You could just use the help command for a pawn and they'll pop it on you and the team, and it's great for traveling the world. Mid-combat is still insane. Having better attack speed or cast speed is a very, very impactful thing. So in terms of non-master skill, I think this is the most important one. Moving on, we now have Thief, which is my main vocation. And for Thief, it's pretty straightforward. You have Formless Feint, which is the ultimate skill. And of course, you've got Skull Splitter, the upgraded version of Helm Splitter, which is the greatest single DPS ability weapon skill in the game for its raw output and how fast you can spam it. It is not the highest burst in the game because another ultimate ability is, but with the right combo, say you're a warfarer or you have a sorcerer in the team, this is going to be really important, as I'll outline when we get to the sorcerer section. For non-ultimate skills though, this is the highest DPS ability weapon skill in the game. And yet Formless Feint is still arguably like the better ability. Infinite iframes where you don't even have to think about it. It just happens. Sure, you're getting stamina drain, but there are many ways to reduce that stamina drain or increase your amount of stamina or consume stamina restoring things. And what it means is you can combine, say, Blades of the Pyre, the fake out master skill. This one normally blows you up, sets yourself on fire, which is terrible for a short weapon buff. But when you got Formless Feint on, you literally iframe the attack on yourself. No burning at all. So it's just a weapon buff and a really potent, kind of forceful impact, which can knock enemies down, help stagger big ones. It's just fantastic. So it's hard for me to say one or the other is the best one, so I'm going to cheat and say Formless Feint and Skull Splitter on this one. Moving on from our starting vocations, we're now on the advanced warrior. The default ability that you start with, that upward strike that becomes Heavenward Sunder here, it's so impactful for the raw damage, for the fact that it reaches up high. It's the most reliable single weapon skill that I think the warrior has access to, and you get it right at the start. But it is best combined with another skill. We're talking about, I believe it's Null Breaker or becomes Mountain Breaker, either way. It's kind of this upward thrust that deals great damage, but more importantly, really effective stagger. This combined with Heaven Ward though leads to consistent stuns. It's kind of like going for a mountain breaker and then following up with a Heaven Ward, or vice versa, and you're always going to end up with a knockdown or a stagger from that. So again, like Thief, I'm kind of cheating here. I'm saying mountain breaker and Heaven Ward Thunder are like no-brainers, must run them for the warrior in my opinion. Moving on, we have Sorcerer next. For Sorcerer, this is in fact not up for debate. The strongest single DPS ability in terms of spell, I feel, is Augral Flare, the upgraded version of the standard flare. And as you hit it more and more, this enhances the damage. So you apply this to an enemy and slap it as much and as hard as you physically can in the window that it's on, and then eventually it pops, massively extending that damage. This is how you're seeing people, quote unquote, one-shot burst any enemy in the game to the point where it's just absolutely busted. Obviously, you apply this to a weak point to maximize it as much as you can. This is why I pretty much always have a sorcerer in my team for the flare specifically. Pawns are inaccurate and awkward with it. They don't always put it on the weak point or an easy to attack part. But by God, if you're playing a thief or something that can hit a lot, you can build up so much damage that you can burst anything instantly. So while a sorcerer has a lot of really potent spells like Meteoron being incredible, none of it can hold a candle to the flare. It's just obviously the best spell. Moving forward, we now have the Mystic Spearhand. For Mystic Spearhand, obviously the master skill, Wild Fury, is ridiculous. You're able to do this really cool combo that has a second version of yourself generated through magic, hitting again at the same time. You're able to stagger and stun and interrupt and deal so much burst with this that it's just the most potent, highest DPS weapon skill that you have as a Mystic Spearhand. But because I can kind of poke holes in it, I wouldn't say it's your best weapon skill overall if I had to pick singular. And in that case, I would pick Mirror Shield. Mirror Shield stops all damage. It is a complete iframe bubble and it lasts for quite a few seconds. It's ridiculous, and it's AoE because it applies to nearby pawns, so you can save a pawn who's been knocked down, or say the whole team's about to take a big blast, you just pop this on. It's so busted. This is the single most effective best weapon skill defensively in the game, in my opinion. And so if you're not running out on a Mystic Spearhand, it's because you think it's too strong and it's making the gameplay boring. It's an absolute no-brainer otherwise. Almost at the end now, we are now talking about the Magic Archer. Yep, it's Martyr's Bolt. This is the real single most DPS weapon skill in the entire game. You basically kill anything in the game in one single weapon skill cast, and that's undeniable. And it does cost true health to cast, which is why it's so effective, but you don't actually have to use all of the true health. On average, I've found about 70, maybe a little bit more than 70% of the true health bar is enough to power up the spell so much that it kills anything. So you don't have to give 100%. You don't have to risk dying. I have found though that say 40, 50% of the health bar is more than enough to kill most things in most situations. And it's not like it's a permanent loss of the true health bar either. It is well worth using. It's just you have to remember to use it, kill the enemy, or put them so low they're no longer a threat. You definitely don't want to put yourself low on true health in the middle of a fight, then randomly get slapped and that be it. Shout out to pretty much the best supportive ability in the game, Recovery Arrow, for the instant heal, or the fact that you can range revive pawns, which is just wonderful and unique, of course, to the Magic Archer. If you're wondering, I would recommend the Sagittate spells, which are basically the most reliable bread and butter DPS ability that you have if you are playing Magic Archer, as a reliable alternative that does not cost you true health compared to Martyr's Bolt. This then brings us to the 9th vocation, the most popular vocation played by everyone. It's the Trickster. Little joke for you and the other 3 players that play this vocation. Obviously, the best weapon skill you can do is Dragon's Illusion. It is a large-scale AoE stun that might cause fear instead, but it basically controls the environment. It is incredibly potent. The only downside is that it's a master skill, which means, say, if you're a warfarer, you can't use this, and that would be wonderful if you could. It's pretty much the most instant impactful thing the Trickster can do, and so I think it's absolutely required that you run it, and obviously you get it super easy right next to where you even unlock the vocation. However, honorable mention to Binding Effigy, aka Latching Effigy, allowing you to target an enemy and have all the nearby enemies attack it. Every time you're in a fight with a big enemy like an ogre or something, it is well worth your time to run over to a nearby pack of enemies, lure them over, and then use the effigy on the big target you want all the mobs to attack. But now it's finally time to talk about Warfarer, which allows you to use any weapon skill combo that you like. In this case, I'll show you what I run myself. We have Mystic Spearhand, we have Thief, and we have Sorcerer. All you really need is Sorcerer and Thief. Sorcerer, of course, is for the really potent spell Augral Flare. You apply this to an enemy, and then that gives you a DPS window to attack. You swap to the Thief and start smashing the daggers into that, ideally repeatedly skull splittering into the target. This builds up as much damage as possible in the window, and then it's all blown out by the flare after a few seconds, killing most anything in the game. The third vocation that you run is completely up to you. Maybe you run a second skill from the Sorcerer or the Thief, or you go for a totally different vocation like me. I, of course, run the best defensive weapon skill in the game, Mirror Shield, so that I can have complete immunity to damage while I'm spamming skull splitters onto the flare. Naturally, that costs a lot of stamina though, and you have to be pretty quick, and it is overkill. In my opinion, that's the best combination of 3 vocations and the weapon skills for max DPS and effect, but of course you can run the third vocation as whatever you like. But there you have it. Those are the weapon skills I think are worth thinking about for every vocation. Obviously, it's very hard to pick just one when there's clearly so many that are very good for each vocation, but I've covered everything I think was most important to talk about. So hopefully this helped you with your own gameplay. Maybe you'll try some new skills that you were ignoring. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.